Our Reddit ask, why did that teacher get fired from your school? Kidnapped a kid and drove him to another state. Was arrested after police tracked him down and found them in a motel room. His name was Mr. Love. I was in 7th grade and our literature teacher showed us Romeo and Juliet, the Olivia Hussey version. There is brief, harmless nudity. But, some parents freaked the F out. Claimed the guy was pushing pornography on us. Drama ensued, protests were initiated, and Mr. C was fired. She taught German and went on the sophomores' field trip to the Holocaust Museum. While there, the class got to hear a Holocaust survivor tell their story. Teacher stood up at this point and proceeded to tell the survivor why the Holocaust was actually a hoax and never happened. He went hunting the day before, left his shotgun in the back seat of his car, forgot about it. Security guard saw it there during school and called the cops. It was legally okay, but he got fired anyway. Not a teacher, but a cop at our school was fired from being the school cop. He kept his actual police job, for accepting sex from minors instead of giving them an MIP. Insane how he was able to keep his job. Chemistry teacher got into a heated argument with the principal over funding cuts. It escalated to the point where the teacher went to his car, pulled out the infant car seat in the back, thankfully empty, and used it to smash the principal's car windows. Art teacher was out one day, and his class was being taught by a sub. It happened to be a day when the students were working on their computer art projects, so all the sub had to do was supervise the work. One student needed to save his work and was missing a disk. This was in the days of 3.5-inch floppies. He found one just laying around and asked the sub if he could use it. Sub agreed. Student plugged it into the computer. They found out it was the disk where the regular teacher was keeping his porn stash. The teacher was fired when he came back the next day. He called a girl a whore. She was 13. He left so fast that he didn't clear out his desk, and that's how I have a key to the school. We had a study hall teacher that was super chill. Everyone loved her. She always let us listen to our iPods even though it was against school policy. One day these two dudes were busted by her doing a deal on some pot. These two had a record and would have been arrested and tried as adults since they were both 18. We were in our last year of school. Rather than report it, she decided to throw it away and not make a deal of it. Done and over. Veil. Turns out the school which that no one liked saw the whole thing. Bitch reported it, got the study hall teacher fired. The entire school went on strike and wore shirts to support getting her rehired. It didn't happen, but we effing tried. We had a one-armed teacher in junior high. 8th, 9th grade, I think he taught shop. Anyway, he was on the elderly side, mid to late 50s, early 60s. One day in between class this prick jumps on his back and starts screaming and flailing around. I guess the kid thought it was funny. Well, the teacher didn't. He threw the kid of his back and pinned him against the lockers with his only arm until some other teachers came over. Well, he was fired for assaulting a student. Needless to say, that kid was a pariah for the rest of the time at that school. I remember hearing something in middle school about, your rights in the real world stop at the schoolhouse door for students. It was my extremely Catholic elementary and middle school principal who said this, but anyways the context was supposed to apply to the students' rights. I guess it goes for teachers too. This story is awful. In the real world, the kid would have been charged with assault and the teacher would have gotten off on self-defense. It was a math teacher in my high school. She was having an affair with one of the health teachers. All the students knew but faculty did not until one night. Apparently she and the health teacher decided to meet at our local Walmart. They used his car to go up on the train tracks and parked to start messing around. A train came and hit the vehicle. That's how everything came out and our small town was shaken up from the reveals. Art teacher had about a week until retirement. Some students called another student gay. He told her about it and she replied, well, you were kind of gay sometimes. She was a nice lady and they let her retire peacefully, but they were on the ropes about firing her. Gym teacher in high school arrested for sending/receiving nudes. He was a creep. I was shown multiple messages from him that he sent to my friends. Fucking disgusting human being. My freshman year religion teacher was fired because his son failed a school drug test and had gotten divorced. Dude was an amazing teacher, especially when talking about art history. 8th grade history teacher was discovered to be having an affair with one of his former students. The affair started when she was 14 and wasn't discovered until she was 18. Somehow or another he was asked if he thought it was appropriate to have this relationship. He responded something to the effect of, "If this were biblical times I would have married her by now." History teacher. He used to wear a cape to class, we all called him Batman. He did so much weird shit, like eating chalk, jumping on empty boxes and standing on his desk. I think he was finally fired for walking around on top of the students' desks, we were in a big U formation, and kicking a boy in the chest for breathing too loud. I had a chemistry teacher that called me out in the middle of class for putting a hex on his family. This guy literally blamed me for his kids getting sick and having to go to the hospital. He did this in front of the entire class. I told the assistant principal, and the next semester he was fired. A math teacher at my old high school got fired for having a relationship with one of the female students. He also kept a real chainsaw in the classroom, not sure why. Also, there was a French teacher who would record all of his classes and take the recordings home so he could watch them privately. The headmaster and chemistry teacher got caught during the summer holidays. Some people were in for a revision day and they heard moaning coming from the headmaster's office. The video basically went viral. They were both married. To different people. Both promptly fired and single now, I presume. The undesirables, the ones who were loners and didn't assimilate into middle school well, me included, were sent off to a weekend camping trip to learn about teamwork, friendship, etc. While we were there, the ESL teacher walked around nude with his gigantic schlong at half-mast. Needless to say, come Monday he was walked off school property when word got out. When I was in grade 10 I had this amazing teacher, he would let us do anything. My school had a strict no eating policy but he didn't give a shit, so we would eat like candy and stuff. One day I was sat down in the first class of the morning and I missed breakfast, so I decided to bring one of those small packs of Frosted Flakes, a bowl and some milk, cause I know I had him first class. Middle of class I'm sat down eat and the principal knocks on the door and the teacher opens the door and the principal sees me eating and she flips at me. This amazing teacher decides to defend me and starting saying, "Oh, it's his class and mind your own business" and all that shit. They go in the hall and shut the door. We go silent in class and hear my teacher shout, "I hope you get effing throat cancer, you stupid witch." He returns to the classroom right after and looks at the room full of 15-year-olds and says, "Which gone crazy?" That was a Friday. He didn't come back Monday or Tuesday or ever. Another teacher told us he moved to Iraq to teach at a college there the week after because the school district fired him. I'm honestly not sure if I was the one that got him fired for eating cereal in class, but he was honestly my favorited teacher ever. My cousin's teacher was forced to stop teaching religious studies because she told the class that when the rapture came and all life was wiped out, she wanted to be having intercourse with her husband on the altar of a Catholic church. Back in high school, over 10 years ago. Had 2 teachers get fired while I was there. One was a Spanish teacher. She was okay for a later 30s chick. She got caught fucking 2 male students at once. Had another female teacher that was in her mid-20s. She was pretty good looking. She was one of the cheerleader coaches. Apparently she was having after-school specials with many of the cheerleaders and other girls who weren't on the team. Everyone then realized why not a single guy ever got anywhere with her. I've got 3. Math teacher my sophomore year of high school. He was a nice guy, and although I didn't find him cute, a lot of the other girls did. Well, turns out he was inviting girls over to his house and partying with them and banging them. He wasn't fired, but the school was closing in on him, so he transferred to another school. 2 history teacher my junior year of high school. Friends with teacher number 1. Again, girls thought he was cute, I didn't. Unlike teacher number 1, this one was married with children. He also wasn't as discreet. All the students and teachers knew what he was doing, and one of the teachers walked in on him and another student one day. After he got fired, he continued to date the student. 3. Science teacher that I never had. He was always weird. He had a son a few years younger than me at the school. He married a student who graduated a year after me. There was at least a 20-year age difference, and the school just found it unacceptable to still have him working there. I feel so sorry for his son. History teacher also coached a wrestling team. Apparently at a party, some of the wrestlers shoved a broomstick up another, smaller, geekier, etc., wrestler's ass. Teacher coach heard about it and didn't do anything. Parents found out, sued, all over the news. Got fired and moved out of state. My social studies got fired for having sex with the lunch lady in the parking lot. She looked exactly like lunch ladies are pictured in movies too. There was a substitute teacher subbing for my health class, an older man in his 60s in 7th grade, and we were being rowdy and unruly, and he screams, "If you were my kids, I would beat and abuse you all." And some kid ran out of the room to the principal's office, and told him what the guy said, and he was fired on the spot, by the school admin. The special needs teacher slept with a special needs student for a couple years. She moved from the middle school to the high school to stay with him and keep it going. They got caught eventually and she got canned real quick. Also, the kid's mom was a bus driver that worked at the school. I think they had to switch subdistricts cause the kid never came back and the mom didn't drive for that school anymore. Caught watching porn on his lunch break in his classroom. A student walked in on him. He asked the Sikh, not even Muslim, student of our class if he was going to plant a bomb when the student asked to go to the toilet. This was after 9/11, even though I live in the UK. When I was in 8th grade, my science teacher was a man who was, for lack of a better term, an utter douche nozzle. He was fresh out of some graduate degree or another, and clearly believed himself to be the smartest, funniest, and best liked entity since George Carlin's run as Mr. Conductor. Worse still, a handful of students seemed to agree with that self-assessment, and the appreciative responses he'd receive only served to further inflate his ego. Now, lest you think that I simply didn't like this teacher, and as such, am treating him unfairly, let me assure you that while you're right, I didn't like him, he was also something of a psychopath. The man would frequently go to great lengths to ensure that students who didn't suck up to him were punished. There was one young woman, for example, who made the mistake of correcting the teacher during a lecture. When our next test rolled around, the girl discovered that she'd received a failing grade, despite the fact that she'd offered nearly identical answers as someone who had passed. Perhaps the most cruel treatment I saw from the fellow, though, came in the aftermath of that mistreatment. The same girl, having found that she'd flunked her test, approached the teacher. She spoke to him in a quiet, polite voice, and although I couldn't make out what was being said, it seemed like she was asking to have her grade changed. The teacher's face adopted a twisted, sardonic smile, and he responded loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Well, I guess you don't know everything, do you?" The young woman replied with hurried whispers. Even when seen from behind, it was clear that she was losing her composure. "I guess you should have studied harder. Maybe you'll learn you're not always right." More whispers followed, though the girl's words became almost audible. She said something about needing a passing grade, and asked how her score could have been so much different from someone who'd offered similar answers. In response, the teacher just laughed. The girl walked back to her desk, tears clearly visible in her eyes. And the teacher kept laughing. Fortunately, there's a happy ending to all of this. See, that teacher offered unfair treatment to a few too many students, myself included, and we managed to, independently, amass a fair amount of evidence against him. I'll never know for sure if our investigations were the deciding factor in this, but I do know that he didn't return to that school the following year. TLDR, my 8th grade science teacher liked to stroke his ego with the tears of young women. Because he was busted for looking at CP on the school's internet. They then made a search on his private computer and obviously found more. He was my math teacher from 3rd to 9th grade, cleaning his ass in front of the bathroom mirror next to a window facing the schoolyard and placing the dirty TP on the windowsill. Fast forward 5 years and I'm in college, in a city 350 kilometers over, and guess who's now a professor there and still doing the same shit, pun intended? A special ed teacher would take about 5 of her kids out of class at random times every week. It's not out of the ordinary, as some of them need medication every so often. However, the school eventually noticed that on her public Facebook page she was posting pictures of those students. They were in her car with her, smoking joints, ripping bongs, and doing dabs. To boot, they were all time-stamped during school hours. She got fired very quickly, None of the students ever got in trouble though. Turns out banging students is frowned upon. He drew a giant penis on a whiteboard after it got public that he was gay. A girl accused him of molesting her, and by the time she admitted she was lying, it was too late. There was a math/history teacher who was a younger guy, and a little bit edgy. He'd make jokes that kind of towed the line, as it were, but for the most part everything was okay. Except for the time he made a joke about ovens to a sensitive Jewish kid, and then he disappeared right at the end of the semester. Music teacher in high school. He was fired for not really doing his job. Guy didn't look like a hippie but did have a whatever attitude about teaching his class. Other students used the class as a time to chill. I knocked out homework from other classes while I was in his class. He would also randomly visit other teachers while they were teaching class. It took a while for the school to decide to terminate him. The guy knew his stuff but was more interested in acting like a free spirit or something. One of the coaches hit a band member with the side of their bus. This was just after the football team lost and the coach yelled for everyone to shut up while he just continued driving. When they arrived back at the school, the coach told all the players to not tell anyone what had just happened. Had a physics teacher who locked 3 girls in his classroom with him and wouldn't let them leave. I also had a temp science teacher who made a homemade firework and set it off in the classroom, nearly burning half the school down. My head of year in year 10, who also taught PE, was banned from supervising girls during trampoline lessons because he would put them on report if they wore shorts under their gym skirts, or didn't wear their gym skirts. An English teacher, a music teacher, and a French teacher left and didn't return after having nervous breakdowns. Second worst school in Britain 1997. It was actually our principal. She used to work at some inner city school or something, and thought she could use similar tactics on us. The thing is, my school was actually a very good school. We routinely won science competitions, scored insanely high on AP tests, our top 10 students in each grade routinely went to Harvard/Yale/Caltech/etc., and so on. Granted, our dropout rate was a little high, but we didn't have any of the usual issues that plague schools. We were, by and large, good kids. This principal somehow managed to piss off all the major department heads at our school. The English head can be described as a bit sang-froid. She routinely made even the biggest and toughest kids feel small despite barely being over 5 feet 2 inches. She wasn't too hard to annoy. The math department was run by an older woman who regularly received praise/awards for how well her students did on the Calc BC AP exams. She was investigated multiple times for cheating, but they never found anything. She was legitimately that good. She was hard to piss off, but not impossible. The history department was run by a sweet older lady whose hobbies included weightlifting. She was a genuinely nice human being beloved by everyone who had her. To piss her off required something on par with drowning puppies. Somehow, some way, my principal managed to piss all 3 of these people off about 2 months into her new position. It all came to a head around November/December with a certain newspaper article. Well, our school newspaper was run by some of the brightest girls in the senior year. They all wanted to be legitimate journalists. One issue they printed caught the ire of the principal because it featured an article on obtaining birth control as well as something about tattoos. They broke no laws. They checked everything with their supervising teacher, the works. Our principal decided that she wasn't having this, and ordered all the printed copies of this edition to be confiscated. That month's edition was effectively banned from the school because of the articles in question. Normally, this wouldn't be much of an issue, but A, she missed a few copies and B, the girls in charge were well aware they were being censored for no good reason. When the principal declined to discuss her reason for their work being banned, they felt their First Amendment rights were being trampled and promptly contacted the ACLU. And because she had banned the paper, everyone had read it. Normally, we'd ignore the school newspaper, but now it was special. During this time, the English teachers, with the blessings of the department head, began to discuss the articles with the student body. There was much to be said about censorship and our First Amendment rights, so they latched onto it as a learning opportunity. After all, they knew we had all read the article. After the local press got a hold of the story, Our school received a Jefferson Muzzle Award for suppressing free speech. We even got a blip on CNN. The school board was less than pleased with our principal. None of the major department heads stuck up for her because she managed to alienate all of them with her strong-arm techniques and general disregard for how intelligent the students were. She was gone by April. Edit, I went back and looked up the event, I got the months wrong. Happened in November, award came in April. I think last year the shop teacher from my old high school staged an attack after school hours wrapped a zip tie around his own neck, hit himself in the head, and stumbled around until someone found him. For a while everyone thought he had been attacked. He claimed he couldn't remember anything. I don't remember if there were working security cameras, and it seemed legit. Turns out he staged the whole thing, never really found out why. My feeling is that he was having other issues and needed help too bad. From what I heard, he was a great teacher. Had a Vietnam flashback and used racial slurs towards an Asian kid. Had another one admit to having sex with two different students about 4 years apart. He was fired. I saw him 2 years later during a wrestling tournament at a high school, so I don't know if he was ever convicted of anything. The only part that was in the news was the initial arrest. It was my high school gym teacher. She was caught having sex with her semi-pro hockey player husband in her office that was attached to the girls' locker room. Surprisingly, the whole scandal was kept quiet, and I don't think the local news stations ever reported it. Well, one was on To Catch a Predator. And another one was posing as her nephew and sexted a 6th grade girl in her class. We had a long-term substitute teacher because we were in 7th grade and a bunch of little shits. And our teacher quit mid-year. This guy looked like brown-haired Steve Banyan. He came in every day in a suit and tie, a terrible partial mullet, and deep eyes that have seen some shit. Things got weird when he started talking about how he woke up one night drunk off his ass on a railroad track, which is when he discovered Jesus. After that he would go on these weird-ass Christian rants, and started talking about how blacks marrying whites was an abomination of God. He next had us all stand up and talk about our heritage. Since I was one of the only kids that wasn't Scottish, Irish or Herman, I was apparently an infidel, and he gave me and the Mexican girl detentions for not being the correct heritage and was made in sin. This, however, wasn't the end of it. The next week he had us all stand up, and we had to recite the books of the Bible. If we missed one, or said one out of order, you got a detention. Only one kid knew all of them. He was taken to get ice cream after school. Right after that incident the teacher was fired and Mr. Bible was put into homeschooling. I just looked up the teacher's name and he is on a sex offenders list. Rumor is that she said that she thought evolution could possibly exist. This was during life science. Yes, I went to a private, Christian school. My 8th grade humanities teacher got fired because he told us, a bunch of 13-year-olds, to tell the man to F off. He wasn't fired so much as asked not to come back next year, but apparently even his anarchist ways were too much for a hippie middle school in SF. He was an IT teacher and the network admins found child porn on his home file, so. Yeah. Our music teacher would hit kids all the time. I know I got spanked a bunch of times. Then she was fired, and a few years later they rehired her. My female gym teacher at my high school got caught by a janitor effing the assistant principal. They were both married with kids, and not good looking at all. They didn't get fired, but they both resigned. This happened 2 days before the graduation ceremony, so everybody was talking about it by then. It also made the local news. Also had a fresh out of college science teacher get fired for blinking a sophomore girl. He got her pregnant.